Hello and welcome to the Work of Thy Hands podcast, where we interview Christian creatives conversing on the ways they have seen their creative projects as co-creative efforts with Christ. I'm your host, Allison Ramirez, and today I'm thrilled to be welcoming our next guest to the podcast, Jessika Caruso. Jessica's debut historical fiction novel, Perpetual Rainbows, released in June of this year, and the sequel is planned to release in June or July of next year, 2026. The story delves into the Catholic experience during the American Revolution through the eyes of the 19-year-old main character, Alara. In addition, there is a lot of espionage, intrigue, romance, and coming of age and growing in faith. Jessica also recently contributed to an autumn anthology with 3 other Christian authors. This is called Fall Through Time and just recently released this past October 15th. So welcome, Jessica. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. I always like to begin with just hearing a little bit about your creative journey. Looks like you're an author of historical fiction. So how did you get into writing? And specifically, how did you get to where you are now with having your first book out?
I got into writing pretty young, just I guess you could call it fan fiction of my favorite cartoons and Disney movies. My big ones were Lady and the Tramp, 101 Dalmatians, fan fiction of my favorite books. I really loved the Babar the Elephant series. So really from a young age, before I could write, I would dictate stories to my dad and he would write them down. So we still have a few of those gems somewhere. They're pretty funny, but I guess I just always loved reading, watching movies, consuming stories, so that drove me to want to create my own stories as I got older. In college, I did major in writing, so I got to do all types of writing, fiction, nonfiction, and then I went into library science as well, so I could be around books even more. And I currently am a librarian part-time, and I've been in school libraries and I'm in a public library now.
A lot of what you shared reminds me of my story too, because I also loved writing when I was little. I don't know if you are familiar with the Webkins.
Yes.
They were really popular 15 years ago, and growing up, I had those little online pets, and I would write stories about them and inspired by other things I would read. And then I also majored in English too in college, got exposed to creative writing and fiction and poetry and some nonfiction as well.
You bring up Webkins. I recently researched if they were still around because I was really into them in like middle school, elementary school, a little bit. And they are still around, but I'm not sure if they're as popular as they once were.
Right. I haven't really seen them in stores because most like general stores would like have them. That's cool though to hear that they're still around. That's
Yeah.
library sciences. That sounds like a lot of fun too. So you do that part-time and then you're working on your second book.
Yes, I also stay at home with my 2.5-year-old son. So that is a full-time job in itself.
Yes.
And I try to help him love books and stories, and he's already loving it. He's already pretending play so much,
Oh my.
making up his own stories. His favorite characters are any kind of community helper, like firemen, policemen, EMTs. Like, he loves to pretend to be those types of characters.
Yes, I love that. Passing on the love for reading to the next generation. Because sometimes in the back of my mind, I think, like younger generations, because with all the social media, TikTok, and all these little short form stuff, I wonder if people are actually still reading books.
I hope he ends up loving it. I'm gonna keep having a bunch of books available, whatever he's into, just having books about those things.
That's a great idea. Tell me a little bit about your publishing journey, because I think you mentioned in your advice, which we'll talk about at the end of the episode, but you self-published, right? I've also
Yes.
self-published all my books, so I love hearing people's experiences with that because I know the whole dream of being traditionally published is usually most authors' goal. I know it was for me when I first started out 4 or 5 years ago now. And I've loved self-publishing, but I'd like to hear how you ended up self-publishing and what that process was like for you.
Sure. I was actually inspired to self-publish because my dad self-published 10 years ago a novel. And he is not really a writer by profession. He taught math his whole life, but he just had this idea for a suspense Christian thriller, and he published it 10 years ago. And I actually published my first novel 10 years to the day after he did. He didn't do Amazon because it wasn't as popular. I don't know if KDP was around 10 years ago or really accessible, but he did hybrid publishing. So that first got me thinking maybe I can do it this way. And he encouraged me to do that if no one was really seeing my vision, or if I wanted to keep my story intact the way it was. And I definitely did. I, of course, want it to be the best it can be, but sometimes I have certain things in mind for the story that I'm really, really passionate about and wanted it to stay in.
I don't really know of anyone who self-published before that 10-year ago mark.
A hybrid publisher. It was through Westbow Press, I believe. I met someone on the Catholic Writers Guild who also used that publication.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I really feel like it's been like in the last 10 years that self-publishing has really become, I would say, the same quality as traditional publishing. If you know what you're doing and you check all the boxes of like having a good cover and formatting and editing and all that, like sometimes it's hard to even tell the difference between like a self-published book and a traditionally published book when they're both done well. So for your first book, tell me what it's about and how your faith inspires your writing, because you mentioned that the main character is Catholic living during the American Revolution. So how does that, yeah, come together in your story?
Sure. So, first off, it was inspired by the place where I currently live, which is Morristown, New Jersey, a little bit outside of that city. But I went to a place where Washington made his winter headquarters in Morristown called Ford Mansion. And I was inspired by that setting to create a historical fiction piece during the Revolution. There's so much revolutionary history here. But then I thought, well, let's think about a minority experience during the revolution. And since I'm a practicing Catholic myself, I wanted to research, were there any churches in New Jersey at that time? Was it hard to practice one's faith? And in fact, there were not any churches in New Jersey for about 20 years after, or maybe even more, maybe into the 1800s, I would say. Um, the closest were Philadelphia and I believe Maryland. There were none in New York either. So I just started from there and created my main character and had her live in the place close to where I currently live. And I had her family hiding a priest that they knew from originally living in Philadelphia. And this is a real historical figure. His name is Father Steinmeier. And he would travel from Philadelphia to New York and ministered to the Catholics in New York who didn't have a physical church building. He was a missionary and started sort of the first church in New York without a building.
Oh. Have you read Secret Dwellings by Angelina?
Yes, I have. I met Angelina and heard about her book through the Guild, and then I reached out and I was like, wow, this book sounds a little bit similar to my own, except set in a different time period. So I was really interested.
That's what I was gonna say, because when you mentioned hiding a priest, because her book has that during the 1500s, so a couple hundred years before yours in like the Protestant Reformation England time. That's neat. I know I love reading historical fiction novels. I didn't really when I was younger, but as an adult, I have definitely gotten more into them. Have you read any of Kelsey Giedel's books? She's
Yes,
also writes she's a Catholic author who writes historical fiction too.
I really like the setting of hers as well, which is the West, westward expansion and 1800s. I love that setting because one of my favorite shows growing up was Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. So I really love the Old West.
I like her series too. And I actually live in Washington State, and some of her books are on the Oregon Trail. They end up in very early day Seattle, and it's so fun to read that because I'm like, that's where I'm living, but this is 200 plus years before.
I like having that connection to the place because it helps you get into the story more. If you know what the setting is and you're connected emotionally to it from living there, it really helps.
Yeah, so it sounds like your book, the setting is based on where you're living or kind of near where you're living. Is that right?
Yep, basically 10 minutes from me.
That's so cool. Like, and that makes I feel like the writing probably more easy to research and more authentic because you're already there.
But there is so much information available between a museum and the location of Washington's headquarters. It's a national historic park. There's trails where the Patriots walked through our state. There's other buildings where historic people stayed. And of course, our libraries have so much about the revolution in this area. So I was always going to these places and looking up this information during my research.
I've been to Virginia once when I was in high school. My parents took me and we went to like the Battle of Gettysburg and we saw George Washington's estate and some other iconic places. And I was old enough to remember it. I was like 15 or 16.
I just moved here 3.5 years ago, so I hadn't really known about all of the history, but once I found out about it, I was hooked. I was like, I have to write something set here, and I want to get into the shoes of the people who lived here and see how they were disrupted by the war.
Tell me a bit about the self-publishing side of it. I saw your cover for the book and it looks very pretty. Did you hire someone to do your cover design or did you do the cover or the other pieces like the editing and the formatting and the actual publishing? Tell me about how that went for you. I'm sure those who
Sure.
are listening would be interested if they're wanting to pursue self-publishing.
I saw an artist on Instagram that I was interested in her work. She did a lot of fan art for different shows, and I loved how her pieces came out. So her name's Vera Axter, Axder. And I reached out to her, and it turns out she does work with authors. So I hired her for the cover image. And then for the cover design, I did that and I put a quote from my dad on the cover since he's an author himself. The formatting, I use the software Atticus because not super great at formatting. So I just wanted all the help I could get, and it worked out well. Another author I met on Instagram who I just recently wrote the anthology with, Emily Ann, she turned me on to the Atticus software and it worked for her too.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I've always hired someone to do my formatting because that and cover design are definitely not my skill sets. I just found someone on Fiverr. But I have heard of, yeah, Atticus and Vellum is maybe another one.
I believe Vellum's for Macs only, and I do have a Mac, but Atticus works on, I think, Mac and PC.
Okay, do you recall, is it pricey, the subscription to it?
It's a one-time fee for Atticus, so that's
Oh,
really nice.
that's nice.
I believe it was around 150. And that wasn't outrageous to me. Vellum was a bit, maybe $100 more.
Okay, that's nice if it's just a one-time fee because I have a video editing software that I purchase and every year. It's like a subscription that you have to pay for. Same thing with
Mhm.
website domains. I like the ones where you just pay for it once and then you don't have to worry about it again.
It used to always be like that, especially with Microsoft Office. And now there's usually a subscription for it,
Mhm.
which is really hard. I just wish I could go back to Microsoft Word 2003 or something.
And you found Atticus to be pretty like intuitive on how to use it and do the formatting and everything.
It was very user friendly.
Mhm.
I wouldn't recommend writing the whole thing on there just because it's web based, you don't really download it, so everything's stored in the cloud. So I
Mhm.
would say probably write it somewhere where you can save it better just in case.
Right.
I just wrote it on Word or Google Docs. And then if I did Google Docs, I would always save it after each time, even though it auto saves, just download it somehow onto a flash drive or something.
Well, that's a yeah, good idea. I know. I had a scare a few weeks back where I thought I lost like all my files, but then they just had gotten moved somewhere else. I like having my stuff saved in multiple places, but
Yeah, it's kind of a writer's worst nightmare to have everything suddenly deleted or think it's deleted.
yeah, right. Like all that hard work. So you talked about the cover design, the formatting. What about editing? Did you Did you have beta readers or professional editor or family friends?
I had a few sources. I had a few family members go through with me as I was writing and find errors there and suggestions. And then I did get a beta reader who I met on Instagram, and I got some ARC readers from Instagram. So those people, even though it was almost close to publication, they would point out some errors, but then close to publication day, I realized I still had a lot of typos I hadn't caught, so I quickly hired an editor from the guild who had just posted about her services, so it was very timely.
No.
Just for line editing, so at the end, in the nick of time, just to get any remaining typos or missing words or punctuation.
What else? Oh, what are all the platforms you published on? Is it just Amazon or do you have your book other places for people to purchase?
I just did Amazon. I guess I just wanted to see how it went, try it out, and then maybe in the future I'll open up to other sellers like Barnes and Noble and other retailers, but for now just Amazon.
I know Amazon is definitely very intuitive and it's free, and that's where I started off too. And only recently, like I've been looking into like other platforms. People have talked about Ingram Spark and Draft to Digital and yeah, Barnes and Noble. Like I haven't my books aren't on any of those. They're just on Amazon and my personal website at this point. But I'm like intrigued to pursue maybe other platforms and see how
Yeah, I know not everyone likes to buy their books off Amazon for different reasons, so it
Mhm.
would definitely open up my audience if I tried other platforms too.
Definitely. And how's like the reception been of the book so far? How's like the marketing going, or have you had a lot of people reading it so far since it came out actually not too long ago, just a few months ago?
Yeah, the main way I connect with readers would be on Instagram, and I hear good feedback from them, and I'm able to actually message them or comment personally and hear what their thoughts are. And that's how I got my ARC readers as well, by creating an ad of ARC readers wanted for this type of historical fiction. So I did get some nice feedback from there, and then family and friends have been reading it. So I do know it's getting into the hands of a lot of people. It's in the library where I work as well, which is nice. And then another library in our county, the Morris County Library.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that it's reaching a lot of people, but sometimes they don't tell you when they read it. I only know what people tell me, really.
Well, that makes sense. I know I love that part though of getting the reviews and seeing them posted on Amazon or having people reach out. It feels very rewarding and people are enjoying the book, and especially when it first comes out on those first few months.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So far it's been really nice. And then I worked on a new project recently, so my attention has been on that the past couple of months, the anthology you mentioned.
Yes. Tell me a bit about that because it looks like it's called Fall Through Time and three other Christian authors. So, was that part of like an organization that you submitted a piece of work to, or you guys as a group put together an anthology?
Yeah, it was actually, we just got together and did it ourselves. We self-published it. And the authors I met on Instagram, I first met Emily Ann because I volunteered to be a beta reader on her first novel, which is called If I Go. And she volunteered to be a beta reader on Perpetual Rainbows. And we did it off. We wrote in a similar genre, historical fiction. She's a Christian author as well. So she came to me with the idea of writing a fall themed anthology. And I thought that was pretty creative. I've heard of a few different anthologies, but not necessarily Christian historical fiction from different time periods in the fall. I thought that was pretty unique. So we reached out to some other authors on Instagram. Some were too busy at the time to collaborate, but we finally found two other authors who were a good fit. So that's how it really got started.
Oh, so how did that work then with you guys are all contributors in the anthology? Did just one of you publish it to Amazon? I've only ever published something on my own, but how did that
Yeah,
work for actually publishing it?
just one author set it up on Amazon, but then she can add other authors, like when she's setting up the title. But yes, only one Amazon account can publish it. So she has access to all the reports and the sales and all of that.
Okay. So then are you guys able to purchase author copies to distribute of it, or is only she able to do that as well?
Yep, only she is able to, but she's able to send it to any address, so um
Right.
they can come to any four of us.
Huh. And so do you guys just split the sales on Amazon or?
So far, since it was just published this month, we are planning to split the sales, but the sales unfortunately don't come in for about 2 months, I believe, after the month that you're talking about. So
Mhm.
for my book, my June sales came in August, and July came in September, and so on.
Yes, I forgot about that because my books have been out more than a few months, but like a really big delay. You're right, 2 or 3 months of the point of the sale when Amazon does the payout for it. I'm glad you mentioned that because I feel like that'd be so fun to co-write, something, whether it's an anthology or whether it's a book. You've given me some thought on.
Yeah, I think it went really well. It was very much an experiment. None of the four of us had ever done anything like that, but I think overall, I believe the Holy Spirit guided us and helped us work together, because it's not always easy for four pretty much not total strangers, but four people from very different parts of the world, different walks of life, different responsibilities. Sometimes it's hard to manage that, but
Mhm.
thank God we published it, and we're really excited that it's out, and they're already talking about doing a winter one next year.
That's so neat. I'll have to look up because I didn't see the anthology. I just looked up your first book. I'm always adding new books to my to be read list.
The idea was to create four different stories from four different centuries, but the theme that tied it all together was Christian historical fiction with some romance. Most of them have a romance aspect, and
Mhm.
set in the autumn, set in the fall.
Okay, that makes sense. Fall through time
Yeah,
because it's the different time eras and then the season of fall. That's great.
exactly.
I know the Catholic Writers Guild is going to be putting out their first anthology pretty soon. They're aiming for sometime in December right now. So that'll be fun. I think there's like at least 10 authors that are going to be contributing to it. So,
Really exciting too. I feel like anthologies are going to become more popular, and it really gives authors a chance to showcase their work and get their name out there, and maybe people research their other works as well. So it's really nice.
yes, I definitely agree. Well, is there anything you want to share still, either about your self publishing journey or about how your faith inspires your writing or your future projects and what's in the works coming up?
Sure, I didn't really talk about faith that much, which I want to,
Mhm.
because I feel that without God giving me the desire to write and the talent and um the perseverance, like, I just have to give all the credit to him, of course, because he gave me this desire to help glorify him in the first place. I also do nonfiction writing on my blog, Catholic Safari. All in all, I hope that my writing about my own personal life and fictional characters, I really just do it to help people see how God works in people's lives, and um, maybe show them like a big story that he's writing in someone's life, whether it be me or the character. Um, and that's why I'm planning on making my first book a series, because I want to follow the same characters and see how they grow and change, and how they get redeemed, and how they're also flawed like everyone, but all the twists and turns of their lives like anyone's life.
So, how many books do you think you're going to have then in the series?
So far, I'm not really sure. I'm working on the second one. As I said, there wasn't a Catholic church in New Jersey until the 1800s. Now I'm remembering, probably like the mid 1800s. So I remember calculating if my main character lived to be actually in Morristown. I don't think until 1849, but there was in New Jersey earlier than that. If my main character lived to see the first Catholic church in Morristown, she would be in her 90s. So I really have a dream of that being some sort of epilogue at the final book. I don't think I will follow her all the way to her series like year by year. That would be a bit tedious, but I do want the series to end with her being able to see her faith being able to be practiced openly.
Yeah, that would be a neat way to end the series and have her, yeah, progression to that. I'm also working on a fiction series. I've been working on it for several years, but I have the first two books are published and I'm working on the third and the final book, so it'll be a trilogy. It's bittersweet because I'm finishing my Rosary Invitation series, but I know when I come to that last book, I'm gonna have to say goodbye to these characters and figure out a way to like resolve their world, and
Yeah.
part of me has thought, I wonder if I can do spin-off books, maybe not like a full-length like a novella or something like that, on like some of the other, not as profiled characters. And like I have seen some writers do that where they have like their main series, but they have like split series that is like within like the same world but looking at different characters. So maybe if I do that, I won't have to totally say goodbye to the series. We'll see what what ends up happening.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did with the anthology, actually. I set it in the same world as Perpetual Rainbows with a different character as the main character, who's a secondary character in Perpetual Rainbows. So if a person reads the anthology first, then they'll maybe be intrigued by that world and then want to read the other book or vice versa.
That's a smart idea because, yeah, or whichever book someone comes across first, they can, yeah, be immersed in that same world. Nice.
Exactly.
I also like to ask too, is there a particular person who inspires you in your writing or Bible verse or story or any other inspiring points you want to share?
Sure. The Bible verse that comes to mind is Titus 1:15, which is to the pure all things are pure. And it goes on a little bit, but that's the part that sticks out to me because sometimes in Christian writing, there is like a very strong inclination to gloss over some heavy issues and make the story so-called clean. And I feel like my story doesn't have anything graphic, but it does delve into some complex morality issues like the morality of war, sexual morality, and some really heavy tragedies as well because I didn't want to shy away from anything in the time period that might realistically have happened. So that verse sticks out to me because I just want to remind myself to look at all stories like with pure eyes, like from my own worldview, and not not really have any bias towards any stories, even if they have grittier elements. There's always something good that can come out of any story and that one can take away from a story. And I also want to encourage people to read my book in that way with kind of an unbiased view and just see what they take away from it. So that's what comes to mind. And then the people who inspired me were who I dedicated the book to, which was two children that we unfortunately lost in the womb, and Trinity and Valor. And Valor was our first one we lost, and the book actually was inspired by him or her because I wrote the book along the timeline when I would have been pregnant with him or her. So that is really a big inspiration from for the book and my first book, Perpetual Rainbows. And we lost our second during the when I was finished with the book a few months before publication. So there was a time I almost didn't publish the book, but then God reminded me that I was dedicating it to my children, so I ended up publishing it.
Yeah, I think writing can sometimes really help through hard seasons. I know for me, when I've gone through really hard times in my life, writing has always been something that has helped to bring me joy and healing through difficult situations. So
Yeah,
thanks for sharing all that. Well,
thank
I
you.
want to talk a little bit about the advice that you had for other Christian creatives. You said encourage other Christian creators to self publish or create their own platform for their work. I was hesitant to self publish, but it has been a great experience to be able to keep my story intact the way I wanted. In addition, we need more stories of faith, both fiction and nonfiction, so please keep writing and creating. I think that's awesome advice, but if there's anything you want to like further dive into or add on to it, feel free.
Yeah, I think there'll always be a market for people sticking to their gut and to their beliefs. And if you feel that you need to write from your heart and include your faith as a big aspect of it, whether a big or small aspect of your writing. I think that it'll always connect with people, and people will admire you for sticking to your beliefs and including that in your writing. I love reading things from the people in the guild, and I love reading things from people in other Christian denominations as well. They've just been inspiring. It's a great community to just build each other up, whether you're in the guild or not, just a community of believers who write in general. People just who build each other up and spur one another on in holiness.
Definitely. And I like what you said about with self-publishing. You mentioned it's a great experience to keep your story intact. And a little aside to that is what I was just thinking is I like how self-publishing, any story can get out there. And even if it only impacts a few people, it's still worth it. Because I know with traditional publishing, a lot of times the publisher is looking like, can this book make a huge impact? Which is understandable because they're spending a lot of effort and money and time working on the book. But I think a lot of times those stories that are still valuable but maybe won't have make that huge splash, traditional publisher would not really go for those books. But through self-publishing, even if they only sell 50 copies or only a few people read it, still has that impact. So I love that about self-publishing. Whether God intends for it to make a big, impact or a small impact, it still has an opportunity. Each book does to be out
Yeah, that's a great point.
there.
You never know who you're going to reach, and they may never tell you how much it impacted them either.
Mm-hmm.
But God placed the story in your heart, so I'd say just go for it.
Yep, great. Well, on that note, I think that's a good place to wrap up, and I'll just let all the listeners know that I am going to be linking Jessica's professional email, newsletter, Instagram, and links to her books in the show notes, so you guys can stay in touch with her and take a look at her works and continue on as she works on more projects. So I always like to end with a closing prayer that's actually from the Catholic Creatives website. It's a really good one for anyone who's a Christian creative. So we can start in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Creator of the universe, how infinite and astonishing are your worlds. O divine imagination, you created a creator when you imagined me into existence. Breathe breath into so much dust. Let me lament for forgetting daily to rise up out of the clay. Free me from the deceit of the mundane and from the lure of comfort, which dulls all my given edges. Most of all, light of my light, forgive my blindness, open all my eyes, salt me with newness and dreams, fire my soul with your inventive flame, and let me be committed to the world by it, and find in it the deepest joy. Universal creativity, flow through me, faith to see things not yet seen, hope to overflow broken cisterns, and love to free me forever. Flow, O river, from the holy temple through my mind to my hand. Infuse my work with spirit to feed hungry souls. And of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.